Hello and welcome back to another Royal Reviewer transmission. Today is the 8th of June 2023. I have to correct myself from the last video where I said it was July. I told a big lie. It's not July. Fraudulent slip. It is June. We are still very much firmly in June. I have not been time travelling. Let's end all sorts of speculation. I am not a time traveller. Anyway, let's delve into today's video. So yesterday was Prince Harry's second day at his MGN hearing for the phone hacking scandal. Yesterday, I was actually away for the day. So I had a lovely holiday. I had a nice holiday. It was beautiful. So the key thing, by the way, if you don't know the background to this, do go watch my other videos. There are two prior to this. So what Harry must show to win this case. So the key thing to remember ahead of Prince Harry's second day of cross-examination is he isn't here to get a free pass to mouth off about the tabloid press. I mean, that is certainly true. He's going to have to back things up with hard evidence. As it says, he must show his best evidence that he was a victim of phone hacking and unlawful information gathering. And it is in no question that unlawful information gathering and phone hacking did occur during that period. The fact is, the matter is, will he be able to prove it? His appearance is focusing on 33 sample articles from the Daily Mirror, Sunday Mirror and The People, covering events in the Duke's life from 96 until 2009. This is the important bit. He has to explain for each and every one of those articles why he believes the newspapers used unlawful techniques to help write them. He needs to bring facts or overwhelmingly compelling circumstantial evidence to court to back his claim. And it certainly seems so far from the previous day's hearing that the facts and the proof and the evidence are a little bit thin on the ground. So I think what he will be relying on is probably more the second part, which is the compelling circumstantial evidence. Does he have enough of that? And of course, the task for the Mirror Group's lawyer is to demolish the Prince's case brick by brick. And we have certainly seen attempts at that. Prince Harry has not been given a free pass or an easy ride on what I reacted to yesterday. So Harry then, I think, was in court. He didn't avoid the cameras. He walked in, he was photographed arriving at court, but he didn't answer any of their questions. So the hearing began at roughly 10:37 on the 7th of June, and he is being cross-examined. So at 10:50, the lawyer for the Mirror publisher, Andrew Green, is asking Prince Harry about an article in The People from May 2005, headlined Harry Carey. The article reveals that the then trainee army officer had been let off daily 5-mile marches because of a knee injury. The Prince says in his witness statement he wasn't freely discussing any medical issues or injuries, but obviously he was not denying that wasn't true. The second part of the article details that he was apparently spending 15 minutes each day emailing his girlfriend at the time, Chelsea Davy. I'd only been at Sandhurst a couple of weeks by this point, says Harry. Whilst I can't remember the specifics of how often I was speaking to Chelsea over email at this time, I wasn't sharing this information with my colleagues, who I'd only just met, least of all because that kind of thing would have made me seem soft, but also because me and Chelsea, should be Chelsea and I, were so protective of our relationship. Prince Harry says the evidence in the case shows payments from the Mirror Group newspapers to a private investigator from the same period, and a suspicious call to a mobile phone used by the then Prince Charles's press secretary, Paddy Havison. Okay. The Mirror lawyer says, sticking with the same story about Prince Harry's knee injury, the lawyer says the knee injury was already public knowledge, with the Prince discussing it publicly. Other cadets would inevitably take note of how the powers that be were being treated at Sandhurst, the lawyer says. So if you were treated differently, that would invite comment, he asks. Yes, Prince Harry responds. If people thought you were getting preferential treatment, they might disclose it to the media, the publisher's lawyer adds. So, dismantling Harry's points brick by brick is exactly what they're trying to do. Basically, a lot of Harry's claims that he's made actually were perhaps even public knowledge, perhaps even, as in this case, were actually given out by statements from the palace. And I find it rather incredible that Harry's legal team didn't actually check this out prior to compiling these 33 stories. I mean, you'd think that, they would do their research and that to try and find out whether or not things were actually in the public domain to begin with, because of course journalists do base some of their stories and investigations off of what is already publicly known. So if they already knew about Harry's knee injury from a palace statement, then they could quite easily talk to people who are Harry's colleagues and who may divulge that information. So again, I think in that particular story, the circumstantial evidence is not compelling enough. And I would imagine that that's how the judge would probably rule. Prince Harry at 10:59 was still going through the 2005 article in The People about his time at Sandhurst, which says he was let off the daily 5-mile marches. He says it was somewhat distressing going through this with the legal team. Asked whether he recalled seeing the article at the time, Prince Harry says most of the articles I don't remember seeing. So he probably... So how can he feel upset? He didn't even see it. He didn't even see it. Or at least he's saying most of them he didn't even see. Most of them were equally distressing then and more distressing today going through this process. Well, he just said almost in the same breath that he wasn't aware of it. Anyway, the Prince says the article contains inaccuracies, adding, to my best knowledge, there was no 5-mile runs. Well, this case is not about inaccuracies, it's about phone hacking, it's about privacy. So again, just having a vendetta against the media, he is using it as an opportunity to air those feelings, but that sort of thing will not be taken into account. Prince Harry is at 11:02 was picking up where he left off yesterday, offering short, terse and quite guarded replies. Not a very good idea in a case that's actually determined by the judge that sat there. In a relatively quiet voice, keeping the questions at arm's length. So he's trying to offer flim-flam. He's sitting in the witness box behind a couple of computer screens looking down at the documents about the disputed newspaper articles. And Mirror lawyer Andrew Green seems to be trying to tease him to say more, asking him when it would be in the public interest to cover a story about his health. Life-threatening injury, Harry replies. I kind of agree on that point. I don't really think we need to know all the ins and outs about a royal's medical history unless it is particularly pertinent to maybe them being able to carry out their royal duties, or indeed sort of life-threatening, or maybe going in for an operation or something. We don't need to necessarily know what the operation might be for, but just that they are in hospital might be in the public interest. Next, the court was now discussing another article from 2006, headlined in The People as shell-shocked. It said Chelsea Davy blew her top about Prince Harry's boozy evening at a sleazy strip joint. The article revealed a highly placed source that she went absolutely berserk at him. She slammed the phone down because she was too angry to even speak. The detail about the timing and length of the calls is so specific, says the Prince in his statement, so not necessarily denying. He says there are 2 payments to private investigators totalling £400 in the Mirror Group newspaper's records, which he alleges are linked to the story. Again, it's going to be very difficult to prove that without actual evidence. Just payments made is not specific enough, I don't feel. With hindsight, it seems likely to me that the defendant's journalists had access to one of our phone records and put 2 and 2 together to make a story. That is entirely possible. The publisher's lawyer is now talking about an article which predates Shell-Shocked, mentioned in the previous post that I've just read. The other story, written in the Daily Mail, is about the trip to strip club Spearmint Rhino, titled Prince of Lapland. He says the source in the story said one of the girls they asked to dance naked was a tall, statuesque blonde and bears more than a passing resemblance to Prince Harry's girlfriend, Chelsea Davy. I can't imagine she would have been pleased to hear that, the Mirror Group lawyer Andrew Green says. He asked Prince Harry insofar as the article in The People of which you complain raises the fact that Miss Davy was angry. It was not adding anything in substance that had not been implied in the other article. So in other words, they could have been using an initial article to write this one. In response, the Prince says there are no quotes from the Lithuanian lap dancer quoted in the Daily Mail, adding, that's a classic example where a story originates from a different paper and then the Mirror or another paper, which is one step behind, is encouraged to go out and get extra information. I do not doubt that indeed goes on and went on. Prince Harry at 11:27 was being asked about the 2006 arrests of journalists from the now closed News of the World, as well as a private investigator for phone hacking. The Mirror Group's lawyer asks, given that both had been convicted, would any journalist take a risk hacking Prince Harry's phone or that of his brother, Prince William? I believe the risk is worth the reward for them, Prince Harry says, adding, I believe phone hacking was on an industrial scale across 3 of the papers. And we should point out that Harry did also disclose that we do believe that Prince William did come to a private settlement. So if he came to a private settlement, then perhaps the Mirror Group was admitting that they did indeed, that there were circumstances where they hacked Prince William's phone. The lawyer goes on, can I ask this? If the court was to found that you were never hacked by an MGM journalist, would you be relieved or disappointed? I would feel an injustice, Prince Harry replies. So the lawyer says, you want to have been phone hacked. Prince Harry replies, no one wants to have been phone hacked. I think the lawyer is trying to wrap Harry up in a little bit of, in words, he's trying to wrap him up. So I think what we can take away from this is that Prince Harry doesn't want to have been phone hacked when he was supposedly being phone hacked, but he does want, at this point, when he suspects that he has been phone hacked, to be proven right. I think that's probably the best way of putting it. The court is now looking at 11:33. At a newspaper article from September 2007 reporting details of Prince Harry and then-girlfriend Chelsea Davy's apparently troubled relationship. Prince Harry's romance with Chelsea Davy is in crisis after a string of bitter bust-ups, the People's article exclaimed. Stunning Chelsea 21 is set to be furious and deeply upset with Harry after 3 monumental rows. In his written witness statement, the Prince says, I really cannot understand how the defendant's journalists obtained such specific details for this article. However, given what I know about the reporter Dean Rousewell's activities, I find it very suspicious. I certainly wasn't discussing our relationship in these kind of details with anyone inside the palace. Given the hours I was working at the time, it is likely Chelsea and I did exchange voicemails, even more often than normal. So I now believe that this information must have come from the hacking of our voicemails. Yeah, I mean, again, it's very difficult to prove that he didn't disclose that information to other individuals. Let's move down and continue. Discussing the same story, Prince Harry says the entirety of the article, headline Davy stated, is suspicious because of the attributions to a palace source. I never discussed any details with the palace about my relationship with my girlfriend, so attributing such information to a palace source is incredibly suspicious, Harry says, because potentially the palace source was indeed Harry himself from his own voicemails. He alleges everything attributed to a palace source is as a result of phone hacking, because the palace would not know about this information. The Mirror Group's lawyer says we are in the land of total speculation about where the information might have come from. Not at all, I disagree, Harry responds. So what is actually a palace source? That's come up in court exchanges with Prince Harry casting doubt on such mysterious unnamed sources in news articles. In royal stories, there are official spokespeople from palaces such as Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace, and their on-the-record comments will be identified as such. But it raises the question about how other stories are based, often relying on information from people holding behind labels, or rather hiding behind labels, such as royal sources or royal insiders, or even more vague friends. It's not just royal stories. Political journalism is often riddled with the views of sources close to and Whitehall insiders remaining anonymous to the public. I have a little bit of a history with sort of royal sources in my sort of YouTube journey, in my time here on YouTube. Back sort of before Harry and Meghan left, and before Harry in a way kind of disclosed that actually really a lot of the palace sources stories had at least some basis in truth, I believed that, like many people, that the journalists were kind of clutching at straws, were kind of making things up. I thought that, you know, the only sources they really had were the ones in their own cupboard. It turns out that that was actually incorrect. It turns out, as Harry's pointed out, that there was a lot of sort of leaking and planting of stories, potentially phone hacking going on. So a lot of these palace sources, stories, friends, insiders, actually at least had some, if not a lot, the majority of basis in truth. The stories may have been stretched. The stories may have been exaggerated. The stories may even, the information may have been kind of a little bit muddled up, but the basis of it was actually there, which now has made me in 2023 reassess what I look at when I'm reading a story where palace sources or the like has been quoted. I now look at it with the eyes and the realization that actually, at least in part, it could be true. And I think as long as you do that and you discuss all the different options about the whys and what fors, then that is okay, because the likelihood is that it may have been a plant, it may have been a leak, it could have actually been somebody from within the royal household that divulged that information. It could have come from a friend. Harry and Meghan have done it themselves. So yes, the way that I look at palace sources now has completely changed from sort of, 3-4 years ago. Harry then at 11:45 appeared very emboldened. Prince Harry is very different today, more confident, emboldened and challenging the Mirror Group lawyer. So he may have found his feet. The court just resumed at 11:59 after a brief break. Andrew Green is continuing his cross-examination of Prince Harry. The award-winning lawyer representing the Mirror Group, in this case, specialises in commercial law and was described by one of his former clients as a beast in court. I think I spoke about that yesterday. So the Mirror Group's lawyer, Andrew Green, has moved on to an article from November 2007, which reported that Prince Harry went out drowning his sorrows after being dumped by his former girlfriend, Chelsea Davy. Prince Harry says in his witness statement that the two bylined reporters can be shown in evidence to have brought in private investigators on various occasions. He believes the newspaper used unlawful techniques. How would they have known any of this, asks Prince Harry. He says the evidence in the case shows a payment to an agency for Project Harry 2 days earlier. The timing of the invoice and the fact the defendant's journalist produced such a detailed story in the Sunday edition of The Mirror about a night out that happened on Friday makes me believe that they were undertaking unlawful activity. So what did Andrew Green say about that? So sticking with the same story about Prince Harry drowning his sorrows, the Mirror's Group lawyer puts to Harry that the other paper had previously reported the Prince's trips to that nightclub. Prince Harry says he would not have been aware of these reports, but assumes most papers were reporting it. He says he had been in the Amica Club in Mayfair occasionally before, but it was not pleasant, leaving to a group of paparazzi. I'm unsure how the photographers knew I was going to be there. There were no photographers there when I arrived, he says. Potentially because somebody leaked the information that he was there. He says there were a number of suspicious calls to Paddy Haverson, his father's former communications secretary, the day prior to the publication of the article. Prince Harry says he believed his phone was hacked in order to obtain information about the trip to the nightclub. If that was true, then perhaps they would have papped him going in. Maybe. So we also have a few new sketches. As I said in previous videos, cameras are not allowed in court. So there is some new sketches which I will have used throughout this video showing Prince Harry. It's a fairly good likeness, I do believe. So at 12:14, I can bring you the final exchange on a story about Prince Harry drowning his sorrows. The Mirror Group's lawyer said that the article's headline was actually a reference to a friend who had become tired of his hooray lifestyle. It's not celebrating the demise of your relationship, he says. And the headline was, "Hooray, Harry's dumped." Again, very much open to interpretation. Harry said that friends would not leak his information. He says, "It's not clear to me how the defendant had this information or why they thought it was necessary to publish it. It was clearly an upsetting time for both of us, and I don't understand where the public interest is in exposing all these personal and private details." Prince Harry says he is suspicious of the article on him being dumped. He says, "By this point, myself and Chelsea were not sharing anything with anyone." Prince Harry says he believed private investigator firm Commercial and Legal Services were commissioned to gather information for the article. The publisher's lawyer replies that some of the information reported in the Mirror article had already been reported in the Mail on Sunday. Some stories so old that Google wasn't even invented. So Prince Harry might be used to it by now, but it must be a strange thing to be in court talking about news stories from decades ago. You could try to look them up, but Google hadn't been invented when some of them were published. So trying, a royal watcher to go back and look is quite difficult unless there are any archives that have been uploaded since. So I'm not entirely sure, I can go on through all the different stories that were involved here, but I'm not going to do that because it will take a long time to do. But Harry has been pressed on the origins of some relationship-based articles. Are you aware that in fact the story of the split and the reasons for it were broken by the News of the World the day before the article by the Sunday Mirror? The lawyer asks. "I'm not," says Harry, "but that doesn't surprise me." The prince describes the article as suspicious because quotes are attributed to friends of the couple. He also references the very expensive payments outlined in his witness statement. Just because he's surprised that friends talked doesn't mean that they didn't, and would probably make you evaluate whether or not they were friends anyway. Harry also revealed that he only sought legal advice after bumping into David Sherborne, his lawyer, in France on a holiday. In 2018, he says he details this encounter in his book Spare. He tells the court even if he had seen the article before this, he would not have been allowed to make a claim. See, that in itself I don't think is true, because I can't remember where it came from, but it was either in Spare or something else that he said, where it was revealed that he spoke to Prince William about making this sort of phone hacking claim, and William said, "Go and speak to Granny, the late Queen." Harry did go and see the late Queen and spoke to her about it. A lot of time had passed since the initial phone hacking scandal, and we know that the Queen had sort of done a deal saying that we would deal with the royal family's part in the phone hacking scandal separately after the event. So most regular people's claims have already been dealt with, and the Queen gave Harry and William the permission to seek legal advice and to put the wheels in motion, which I do believe they did. So when Harry says, that he wouldn't have been allowed to make a claim, there are also reports that the Queen, the late Queen, was very happy for him to do so. It was all contained within the palace, and even if I wanted to, I wouldn't be allowed to make a claim, he says. He also claims there was industrial scale destruction of evidence. You constantly refer to destruction of evidence. Where do you get this idea of destruction of evidence by the Mirror Group from? The publisher's lawyer asks. My legal team, the Prince responds, adding that he believes the phone hacking started at the Mirror Group. I think Harry has been led up the garden path amongst all of this. I think David Sherborne has preyed upon Harry's vulnerabilities and dislike and distrust and hatred, apparent hatred of the press. I think that there is a lot of money for lawyers to be made on both sides coming from this case, and it would not surprise me entirely if Harry hadn't actually been the victim of lawyers trying to exploit his own vulnerabilities. The only people that are really going to win from this, I do feel, are the lawyers involved. I don't think it's going down very well with the public. All the inaccuracies are being picked apart and shown up. This was not good advice. I don't think whoever advised Harry, potentially David Sherborne, may have coerced him into doing it. I don't convinced him that he could win. I don't think this is a good idea. I believe that the majority of those 33 articles are probably going to be dismissed or thrown out, whatever it is, whatever the legal terminology is, because there isn't enough circumstantial evidence that would prove it. I think Andrew Green has done his job in trying to dismantle this brick by brick, as it were. So I don't think it's a good idea. I think that settling as William did, privately getting a sum of money, in my mind, I think that they were phone hacked. I do believe they were phone hacked. But having the evidence to prove it is the hard part. I think the Queen, the late Queen, was very astute in knowing that. She knew that from the start. So what, the advice that she sort of gave to the family was, wait, we'll bring our own cases privately and we'll settle privately. William has benefited from taking the advice, the very wise, sage advice of his late grandmother. So we're seeing William, who's taken the advice, who I think has navigated the situation very well, didn't have to appear in court, hasn't had to confirm or deny stories, hasn't had to lay his heart out, hasn't had to be questioned, hasn't had his sort of testimonials, witness statement picked apart and brought down brick by brick. We've got that against Harry, who potentially could walk away with nothing, having been pretty much ridiculed and having all of his claims broken down. I know which one I think I would rather do, and I think the late Queen's advice was very, very, very good advice. At 12:58 yesterday, Harry's cross-examination ended. Lawyer Andrew Green has wrapped up for the Mirror, but not before a final clash between him and the Prince. He asked the Prince to identify a single voicemail that he knows was hacked. Prince Harry says there is hard evidence of suspiciousness and adds, I believe the phone hacking started at the Mirror Group. You say you were hacked over a 15-year period, the lawyer replies. Yes, Prince Harry says. Are you claiming damages on the basis that your phone was hacked on a daily basis? It could have been, says Prince Harry. I simply don't know. My lord, that's the part of the reason why I'm here. Then the court broke for lunch, and after the long morning session, the court is breaking for lunch and will be back in an hour. The Prince's own barrister, David Sherborne, says he has a few more questions for Prince Harry, which he'll put to him in around 10 minutes after lunch. So let's look at the pattern of Prince Harry's cross-examination. The Mirror Group's lawyer, Andrew Green, says the information has already been reported by other newspapers before the Mirror papers got to it. Prince Harry replied that reporting just encourages Mirror journalists to use unlawful techniques to find a new angle, which is another, I suppose, reason why the never complain, never explain is adopted by the royals, because the moment, like Prince Harry, that you start talking or responding to these sorts of stories, the more conversation it actually generates. The lawyer says it's worth pointing out to the possibility someone in Prince Harry's circle might have talked to a journalist. Harry says the source may have been made up by the journalist. Lawyer says palace sources were aware of what was going on in Prince Harry's private life and leaked it to the press. Prince Harry says these sources would not have known such personal information. So again, kind of blowing a hole in Harry's supporters, his core supporters' own arguments that the palace have been sort of leaking information to the press, because Harry is saying that they wouldn't have known that information to leak to the press. Harry is just full of contradictions and it's all being exposed. Then I think the court broke again for a short break. Harry says that his case is not total speculation. He said, "No, I don't. And it is even more destructive that it was used as a headline, I think, this morning in the newspaper against me." He's now commenting on articles that are going out almost in real time. Then I think Harry pretty much has said, Harry was asked if he believes he was speculating that unlawful information gathering had taken place. Harry replied, "No, I do not." He continued, "For my whole life, the press have misled me, have covered up wrongdoing, so to be sitting in court knowing that the defence has the evidence in front of them, and Mr. Green, the publisher's lawyer, says I'm speculating. I'm not entirely sure what to say about that." Then at 14:32, Harry finished giving evidence. After asking him a few final questions, the judge said, "Thank you very much, Prince Harry. That really is the end of your evidence." So I'm sure Prince Harry has breathed a sigh of relief. But Harry did stay in court for the ex-royal editor's cross-examination. To summarise, I think this case is going to be going on with other celebrities as well. I think I did hear that we aren't going to hear the final outcome of this potentially for the next 5 or 6 weeks. So Harry has done his bit. The witness statement is there for all to see. The evidence has been given and provided. He has been questioned. There will be a lot more going on over the coming weeks, and if any information does come to light that is relevant and important, I will of course speak about it here on this channel. So thank you for watching. If you have enjoyed it, then please give it a big old thumbs up. Don't forget to share on social media, and of course do hit the bell so that you know whenever I upload a new video. So from me, to you all, and goodbye.